tensions that have been building along the Poland-Belarus border for weeks spilled over into violence today. Polish border guards used water cannon against migrants on the Belarus side of the frontier. Warsaw says the people were armed with gas grenades supplied by Belarus, which they threw over the fences towards Polish guards. Stones and rocks were also being fired during a tense standoff at the checkpoint. Belarus has accused Poland of pushbacks and of not allowing people to apply for asylum in the EU. But Warsaw says Minsk is engaged in a hybrid attack on the country.
I do not think the migrants came to Belarus with devices. They got it from the Belarusian services. The Belarusian servicemen are watching. They do not react, as we have already said. In the night, they cut the fence, the barrier. They do not hide it. They help the migrants to cross the border illegally. What worries us is the fact that until recently the Belarusian services tried to hide it, and now they are doing it explicitly when we record them with cameras. They do not hide it, absolutely.
Jack Perrick, our reporter in Brussels, says the situation on the border is a big concern for the EU, particularly when it comes to upholding people's right to seek asylum.
Those people have been on that border for a number of days now. It's extremely cold, and it appears that this sort of boiling point has been reached. This is a huge concern for the European Union. Obviously now there are questions about the security of that border. But the big question as well, and this is probably something that hasn't been talked about enough perhaps throughout this crisis, is that once those people do arrive into Poland, they do have the right to apply for asylum. I was speaking to a legal expert earlier today, Nicolo Figa-Talamanca from No Peace Without Justice, and he explained that what Poland's doing is in contravention of international law.
The conditions under which somebody arrives have no impact on the right that people have under international law, under Article 31 of the Refugee Convention, to seek asylum in a country. It's often the case that asylum seekers are forced to arrive or enter a territory without authorization because they're fleeing from persecution. Now, Poland has, a month ago, passed legislation which allows for migrants to be pushed back at the border. So from the Polish point of view, from the Polish legal point of view, the authorities are abiding by Polish law. But Polish law is simply illegal under international law. The Refugee Convention is clear.
But Poland simply insists that it is protecting the EU's external border. Now, this week already we've seen the European Union agree to sanction Belarus further over this migration issue. 4 rounds of sanctions against the regime of President Alexander Lukashenko haven't really changed anything. But we know now that this is a situation that is getting ever more difficult, as we've seen with this violence on the border.
And Jack, today we heard from Jens Stoltenberg, the NATO chief. He said he's concerned about the situation in Belarus, but he also said that NATO stands in solidarity with Poland and other affected allies. Do you see a risk there that this might lead to military intervention?
Well, that is a huge worry, I think, for the European Union and for NATO as well. Poland hasn't yet invoked Article 4 of NATO's treaties, which is when serious consultations about military cooperation come into effect if a country feels that it may be being threatened. Poland hasn't done that. The Polish government feels, actually, that it's got control of that border broadly. The military presence there is very heavy. But there is another angle to this as well. Ukraine has said that there are 100,000 Russian troops on their border. That's obviously a concern for NATO as well. So this eastern border within Europe of the European Union is becoming a bit of a big problem.